G'day and welcome to the Vintage Time Australia channel again. I know it's been an extremely long time between videos. Basically what's happened is I've been really busy, and I'm sure a lot of other people have been pretty busy as well with the pandemic and all that sort of stuff happening. But in addition to that, the way that in Australia it's either really hot or really cold, and we haven't really had any natural lighting here for months. So now it's started to brighten up a bit, but in addition to that, I've actually just invested in a decent lighting setup, so hopefully we'll be able to do videos light independent in future. But in today's video we're going to look at a Grand Seiko 3180, which is the first Grand Seiko. And I've already got the movement out of the case because I had to do some things with it. So I guess we'll just start with the case. So the case on this one is a gold cap case, and you can see there it says 14 karat gold filled. And if we just have a look at the case, it's in reasonably poor condition. So you can see there the pendant or crown tube will need to be replaced as well because it's paper thin, and doesn't really fill me with confidence, that one there. If we turn it over onto the back, you'll see that the gold plate's been eaten through in a few areas, and I'll just get a toothpick just to point at that. So you'll see just around the badge there, or emblem, it's all been eaten out there. And if you go to the side, there's some chips on it around here as well, and so on. You can see there's some dents. One of the problems with gold cap cases is that they're nearly impossible to fix, so I wouldn't recommend that people get one that's already got some damage on it. This, you can see, has been polished a few times before as well, which will reduce the thickness of the gold cap. And the other issue with these as well, which I'll just crack it open and you'll see. So when the cap goes, when the cap goes around the sealing surface there, all you've got is basically a band of corrosion all the way around, which is obviously not ideal. Where you've got that sort of thing there as well, you end up with a gap between the case and the case back. So the chances this one will be totally water resistant in future are minimal. And what we're going to end up doing with this one, I've actually had a few people have a look at it to try and repair the surface around there. And the problem with it is that because the base metal of the case is actually brass, the gold, to try and deposit gold on there, the problem that you have is that the temperature that you need to melt the gold is much higher than the brass. So you'll heat the gold up to drop it on, and then the brass underneath will just melt away, and you just can't get anything to stick to it. So I've had a few people look at it with a few potential solutions, and we haven't been able to come up with anything that's really going to work reliably. So the way forward with this is we're just going to try and conserve the watch rather than try and repair it. And so that it can be worn a bit, we're going to fill in the back just with some Permatex. So Permatex is what they use on car transmissions and stuff, and it basically forms a silicon gasket surface, and that's really the only trick I've got up my sleeve to do that. I've had a few other antiquarian watchmakers look at it as well, and they've said that's probably the best approach until we can work out work out in the future something that can actually repair it. But until then, at least you're not making the damage worse. So if we just put the case aside and have a look at the case back, you'll see there it's actually worn right through. It's worn a hole all the way through, and someone's filled that up with some epoxy. Probably not the best repair, but it will work, and I'm probably not going to mess around with that too much at this stage, because again the back on this is a fairly soft base metal, so anything we kind of do to try and mess around with it could make more of a mess of it. Okay, so we'll move over to the actual watch itself. The dial and hands are in excellent condition overall, so there is a little bit of patina on there, which is to be expected. You'll notice that the battens are all cut in with a dish on top, so they kind of go like that on top, although my finger is exaggerating it. And that's how you get the quite remarkable reflection, which just looks unique on all the battens. The little actual Grand Seiko logo, which you're looking at just there, that is in the dial, and I'm not actually sure how they've done it. So I'm not sure if that's been applied or something else. I mean, I'm sure someone can tell me in the comments. If I looked at it under some magnification, I could probably figure it out. So, alright, we'll go ahead now and we'll just take that off. Now, I've just got to work out where the screws are to do that. And, well, actually, I'll take the hands off first. That would be good. So, we'll take those off first. And I've actually just put my, so if you didn't hear that, I've just put my hand remover in a place where it shouldn't be. So we'll just grab that. And always do this under plastic. Not doing so will lead to a very bad day. Okay, so we've removed that now, and as usual there's a little bit of patina just around the middle there. So the reason I've got these cutouts in the side of the movement holders is to do specifically this job. Just makes it a bit easier, and it means you don't have to handle it as much. I'm using a 7S26 holder on this one because it's roughly the right size for the movement. Now just getting a good grip on that. I don't really deal with enough of these to custom make one, so I'm just using what I have. Okay, so that should now be loose. And we have the dial removed. So under there, I might just try and jack this up a bit. So under there, fairly typical layout for a no calendar watch. So we have the hour wheel there, just with a foil on top of it. And there we just have the typical cannon pinion. I probably won't take the shock protected settings out on camera just because they can be messed up very easily. But we'll go forward and take some of the other bits and pieces off. So we'll just take the setting spring off here. Actually, I'll just move this around just so that it sits better. Alright. Actually, what I might do before I do anything else, I might just take the balance off, so that just reduces the chance that we can seriously damage something. Because of course it'd be nearly impossible to find a balance for this. Okay. that is removed. Now I'm just going to turn it back over and just get back onto the calendar side. So I'm just going to remove the setting spring now. And I'm just trying to get a good grip on this. This is not the perfect shape movement holder for this, but it's going to do the job. Okay. Alright, so now we're just going to remove the yoke and the yoke spring. So you can see that there. And so that we don't lose the yoke spring, I'm just going to put some Rodico over the top of it there. And then I'm just going to pull it out of position. And this is a bit tricky to do on camera because I'm doing it at an angle. There we go, and it hasn't shot off into the room. So now we'll remove the yoke. And the setting lever. And I think that is a screw, yeah, that's a screw style. So we'll leave that in place for now and just remove the stem. And the winding pinion. See if we can alright, that's a bit better. Now just trying to be really careful with these screws because the chance that they could break is on the high side. Okay. I'm just going to remove the cannon pinion and we're pretty much done with this side. Minus the shock protected settings. So that's the die fix and the die shock, which I'll take off camera. Now we'll turn that over. Now the layout of this I think is pretty similar to the 57 series movement. So I don't have any notes on me here at the moment, but that was probably developed around the same time or developed from this movement. So you can see there it's a pretty typical layout. So you've got the fourth wheel there, the escape wheel is there, third wheel's there, and you've got the barrel under there, and there you've got your winding wheel there. So we're just going to make sure there's no power on the barrel because that will make our day quite bad. So yeah, there was no power on it anyway, but it's always best to check, because if you don't check that, what will happen is when you take it out, when you take off that ratchet wheel, it could spin the whole movement, you could damage something. we go. And that looks reasonably good under there. It has a little bit of wear just on the top there, but I don't think that's anything too serious, but I'll have to check it out further. So I'll just remove this one here now. Oops. And don't forget these spacers. They're a pain in the neck if you lose them. Okay, that's all done. Now there's no real need to take the click spring off here, so I'm going to leave that in. There we go. So this has got one of the jeweled barrels. So you'll see there the jewels are actually in the barrel caps. So the 44 series has the same thing. Is it effective? Probably not. It would be better to see them in the bridges in my opinion. But you'll see you've got one on both sides. In my opinion, pointless. Obviously they thought they were a good idea at the time, but yeah, I'd much rather have them on the bridges. I think that's a better use of the those two jewels there in my opinion. Alright, so we've nearly got it all apart now, and you can see the hack lever there. So it's the same as the 44, the later ones. So it's very simple, not prone to breakage, perfect. And that little foil under there is just a spring. Now I'm just going to have to change battery in this camera, so I'll be right back in a sec. Okay, after that interruption, I'll just get this one finished now. So again, as we were looking at before, we're on the train side now. And I'm just going to take off the main train bridge there. We're actually nearly done with this. There we go, so that's one screw and then the other one. Okay, so I'll just lift off the train bridge there and just take the screws off with it. And there's your gear train. So very typical construction as I mentioned before. So you've got the fourth wheel there, you've got your third wheel there, escape wheel there, and of course your centre wheels in the middle there. So we'll just take those off. So the quality of the wheels looks better than most of the Seiko wheels. I think they're probably handmade. They have a spun finish on them, so they're not just stamped out like the bog standard movements are. So that would imply that there's some amount of hand finishing on them. But the only person that would know that for sure is someone from Seiko, I would say. And we'll take the third wheel off there. And that's in fairly good condition. And we'll see what we've got left here. So there's your centre wheel there. So we'll just push that out the way. And we'll take off this center plate here. Just in here as well, you'll note, and this is common across the Seiko 60s movements, is that there's just a little fella there that screws on, which means you've got two jewels there supporting that center wheel at the top rather than just the one. So if we turn that over, got one jewel in the bottom there and another one in the top. Actually, just make sure I'm giving the right info there. Yeah, so definitely looks like that. Okay. So then we'll just come back to that. We'll take out the escape wheel, and it's a fairly typical escape wheel. There's no surprises there at all. Now I just need to take the pallet fork off and the pallet cock to be specific. And it's just a typical pallet fork. There's no surprises there at all. And then all we really have left is the hacking lever there, and also the foil for the hacking lever. And then just the center wheel, which is again a fairly typical design. And now you're down to a bare plate. So there you go, that's what's inside the first Grand Seiko, which is the 3180 movement. And yeah, they're quite a nice movement. They're very similar to the later Grand and King Seiko movements, so there's not really a huge amount of difference overall. Anyway, I'll leave that video there, and thanks for tuning in, and I have some more coming up soon. Thanks again.